All right, this is the installation video for the Stage 1 kit for the Longshot and Zombie Strike Longshot. And to install your kit, you will need your blaster, the kit, 2 flathead screwdrivers, a small Phillips head screwdriver, and a number 2 full-size Phillips head screwdriver. So first, if your Longshot is not brand new in the box, you have probably installed these climbing handles. And they are not designed to be removable. They're a one-way snap. So to get them off, you have to take 2 screwdrivers and pry them off. And this is going to cause some damage to the handle, basically breaking that one-way snap. So you'll end up with something like what I have here, where it's held on, but you can still take it off. So what that looks like, this does require quite a bit of force, so be careful not to damage your shell, which is why we're using 2 screwdrivers to try and distribute the force. I like to brace them on these raised portions here, and then push down, prying the handle upward, like that. And then you can remove it. The motion for that is you're doing this. So once you've got the handle off, you can go ahead and remove all of your screws, which I've already done, and then you can take your stock off. Next, you're going to want to split the blaster, and if it sticks, you can use the small flathead to pry along the seam. You don't want to force it open because you can lose some springs if you do that, like the trigger catch spring. So we're going to open this up. Okay, that was pretty easy. All right, and then set aside the top part of your blaster. Next, first thing you want to do is get to your trigger catch so you don't lose the spring during the process. So you're going to want to hold down the priming indicator, grab your trigger catch, and rock it out, just like that. And then get the trigger catch spring out. Okay, so this is not a stock blaster, this is one of our tester blasters. So all of the locks and various pieces have already been removed, but I'm going to go over their locations. One of the locks you will have to remove in order to get the plunger tube out is the bolt sled lock, and that is normally found here. It's a small square black piece, and you'll have to remove a screw here to get to it. So you want to remove this screw, and then you'll have to remove your trigger, and then you can take out the bolt sled and plunger. So when you're doing this, your blaster will look like this. And then once you do that, there will be a bolt sled lock here. You can remove that, and both of these locks you can just toss. You don't need them. So now that we've freed up the bolt sled, I'm going to lift the plunger out and slide it back. Whenever you're taking this part out, the chamber and dart tooth are going to get knocked out of place when you're putting them back in, so just keep that in mind. You want to be very careful not to lose this spring. Okay, so I'm going to set aside this half of the blaster, and we're going to focus on the bolt sled and plunger. So next, you're going to want to remove these 2 screws and hold down the spring retainer when you do that, so it doesn't put pressure on the screws as you take them out. You want to be very careful not to strip these screw holes or bend this in any way. So next, remove your plunger and set aside your bolt sled. And now this is where the number 2 screwdriver comes in handy. This is a larger screw in the front here, and you don't want to strip it. So you can just grip the plunger head firmly and take it out. All right, there we go. Set the plunger head aside, remove your stock spring and the spring retainer. And you're going to install the OMW spring, the 8 kg spring, and the Stage 1 spring retainer. You can see the difference between the 2 parts here. And you'll notice that the 8 kg spring is a tiny bit longer and much thicker. It's a pretty powerful spring. So take your new spring retainer and slide it on. It's usually a snug fit with these stock plunger rods, but that's no problem. It's not going to make a difference with this spring. So next, put the spring on, and now comes the tricky part. You need to install this plunger head, making sure that these notches line up with the with the cutouts in the plunger head. And you're going to have to compress the spring to do that, or you won't be able to screw it down. So I hold the spring like this and compress it and grab it. And then get the plunger head situated and screw it on. Oh man, that's a powerful spring. So you want to get this down just snug. Doesn't have to be fully tightened. Now you can release your spring and gently let it come forward. And at this point, you can go ahead and tighten the screw with that last quarter turn or so. Okay, so now take your plunger assembly and install it into the plunger tube. Get the screw holes lined up and screw everything back together. Again, being careful not to strip the screw holes. Okay, so now take your shell and install the plunger and bolt set assembly. But keep in mind this hole here and this peg. You have to make sure that the peg installs into that hole, or it will snap off during firing and your plunger body will not be held in place and it will just sort of rattle around. But first, you need to get the bolt sled installed, which can be a little tricky because the chamber has a tendency to come out of the shell when you do this. There. And I know it, even though it looks like your plunger may be in place, don't trust it. Actually, tilt your blaster up, look down in there to make sure that the peg is in place. Okay, or you run the risk of snapping it off. So next, onto the trigger catch. Take the OMW trigger catch and trigger catch spring, put it on the far spring post. Lift the priming indicator and slide the spring under. The Longshot is an older design, so there isn't like a nice place for the spring to sit. It just rides up underneath the priming indicator. Now take your trigger that you removed so you could get to the locks and install it. And then screw it down. Now take your trigger spring and install that as well. And that's it for installing the stage 1. From here, put the two halves of the shell together and it should drop into place, just right into place. If it doesn't, take it out and inspect your bolt sled up in the front to make sure that these wings are in their slot and that the chamber is centered and not twisted to one side or the other, and that the dart tooth is in place. If all of those things are in place, the shell will just drop right on. One of the easier blasters to reassemble. Okay, from here, reinstall all the screws, put the stock back on, and then snap your priming rod into place and give it a test fire. In the next video, we'll be chronographing the stage 1 kit with the 8 kilogram spring. Thanks for watching.